Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Intel FutureGen broadcast. I am Becky. I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager at NSE, and with me is Ashley Washington from Riot Games. Hi, Ashley.
Hello, happy to
Hi.
be here.
Awesome. Thank you for joining. Before we dive into our Q&A, I'm just going to introduce the Intel FutureGen program a little bit for those who might not know what that is. So we've teamed up with Intel to run the Intel FutureGen program. We take 20 students each year who are interested in the esports or games industry after they graduate. And then we will give them industry buddies, get them access to events, etc., and do online broadcasts like this. So, yeah, Ashley, hi.
Hello.
Hi. So you are a product lead at Riot, specifically looking after the Game Changers tournaments. But before we kind of go into explore that a little bit further, tell me about your career path, really. Like, how did you end up in esports and gaming?
Yeah, so I was playing games when I was younger, like I think since I was 6 or so, I was playing some variation of a video game. My parents were very supportive. I had consoles and everything. I was also pretty good in school, so maybe it made it easy for them with this, but I loved games and I played a lot. Honestly, when I was younger, I didn't really think about getting into a career in gaming. It was just something that didn't even occur to me, mostly because I didn't really know anybody working in gaming and definitely not any girls. So
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Really, I just continued my career as I had planned it. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to work in psychology. I focused this pretty much through to my sophomore year of university. I went to New York University, but they started a game design program while I was there, and I actually made the switch into this program after I'd already started my other degree. So full switch, ended up studying games for the rest of my time there. But even then, after getting a degree, I still didn't make the decision to work in gaming. I had to find other things because once you go to NYU, you have student loans. So
Yeah.
I instead focused on, it's going to sound really boring, but advertising. And I pretty much stuck there for a while, did transition into account management. But I decided to move to Berlin at some point, and someone made the suggestion to me that I maybe give gaming a try since I changed scenery, changed communities. Maybe it would work that time. And I did. I started as a game tester, so I was just testing mobile games for like 3 years maybe. I also did this at another company. I did this at 2 companies here, and after a while, I, decided to teach myself programming because I wanted to maybe make games. Did a little bit of data science as well, but I realized after all of this, I'm not very good at programming. I'm not very good at, like, the hands-on part of the tech stuff, but since I was already in a game company and a startup actually here in Berlin, they gave me the opportunity to give product management a try. Actually, I was very fortunate. They were really supportive. I basically stuck with this for about 3 to 4 years. And I realized that this is kind of my thing, organizing, communicating, solving problems. If you're good at a little bit of everything, product management is basically like the thing. I will say this is a very like reductive version of my career path. I was also a gaming journalist at one point.
Yeah.
And I've also dabbled in other things as well, more writing focused. But this is ultimately where I landed because it gives me the ability to position myself in a range of different types of projects in the space.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've had such a varied career path. And I feel like each person you speak to who ends up working in the esports industry, they all kind of have a similar story, unless they did manage to be one of those lucky people who, straight after uni, they ended up working in gaming and esports. They really dotted around. My story is quite similar. I went into like advertising, and then I went into, I was a graphic designer for a long time. And then automotive industry and the property industry and all this stuff before actually finally ending up in esports. So I think, yeah, each person's story is unique, but it's quite similar that you really just kind of that go to many very different places before you actually land where you are now, and then I'm guessing you'll be
Yeah.
in esports and gaming forever.
Yes, I hope.
Potentially, yeah. Um, awesome. So, in terms of product management, let's kind of look at your role. Like, what does that look like within esports? Like, what do you kind of get up to on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, it's I love this question because, until I got this particular job, I actually wasn't sure.
Yeah,
Because the last company I worked at was like an app kind of focus sort of
sure.
thing. But when I approached this opportunity, I thought about that. You know, how does product management fit into esports, specifically tournament organization? Like, this is an events thing. Don't events people work this out?
Yeah,
Well, entering a company like Riot, where at the core of this tournament is a product with a purpose, there absolutely is room for product management. So, normally, a product management job involves coordinating all of the moving pieces of putting a product together. So, you're not going to be on the ground organizing things. You're not going to be like actually, deciding what happens in a broadcast or what happens in content production, but you will talk to leaders from each segment and work with them to put together the overarching tournament. So, in many ways, you're kind of the glue between the different functions and the person that helps make sure problems get solved if something gets raised. So, in my job in particular with Game Changers, my job is to not only do that, but to also look at Game Changers as a tournament, think about what we want to do as a company with Game Changers, and figure out how I can execute it for EMEA specifically, because the product is broken down into regional segments. So I have the opportunity of connecting with players, teams, organizations in the region, figuring out what they kind of expect from this, what their experience has been like, how I can interpret feedback and implement all of the things that I think might help us get closer to what they would like to see, and make sure that people working on the tournament, the different leads and experts, are working along that same vein to deliver the product in the end.
yeah, nice. Yeah, I think um, product management, it can be quite elusive from the outside, knowing what that actually is. So thanks for shedding the light on that. Do you, for students who are potentially watching this, if how would you like recommend them to kind of step into product management if they're thinking this might be something that interests them?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I mentioned this a little bit, kind of if you feel like you have a little bit of an aptitude for a lot of different things, that product management is probably a good home for your brain, because I think that if you are interested in something like that, pretty much any job you've ever done in the context of a product will help you kind of take the steps to being a good product manager. Like I said, I did QA testing, I did data science, I did content creation. I knew at the end of the day what it was taking to put that product together. And this overview that I had by way of being part of these different areas helped me to understand better the big picture and how to coordinate it. So I would say that if like product management is something you're interested in, you definitely want to focus on m- organizing, putting things together, but not only putting them together, aligning them to a vision, a strategy. What do you want to achieve with that particular thing? And how are you going to get there? Most jobs have some degree of this. So if you are able to hone that and build the skills that are needed to do it, and there are a lot of different types of skills that might help you do it. There are a lot of different types of product managers. Essentially, when you reach a point where you feel like you're comfortable being able to communicate, have different difficult conversations to mitigate problems and manage expectations, you've already positioned yourself as a good candidate for product management. And really, the steps to get there are going to take the shape of a variety of different roles, whether that's event coordination, project management, or some other. There are lots of titles in the esports industry.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of titles that will be product management without saying it.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
get this vibe from the role, then you're already setting yourself up to move in that direction.
Yeah, awesome. Um, so speaking specifically about what you managed, which is game changers, tell us a little bit like that. What's the kind of goals and objectives of game changers?
Yeah, Game Changers is a program that's meant to provide exposure and opportunities for women who are interested in having a career in esports. At the moment, that takes the shape of a Valorant tournament in EMEA. And essentially, what we're trying to do there is create a space where women feel comfortable to, put themselves out there and give a competitive career a shot with the game. And this has recently evolved this year to both address kind of players starting out and players who have already been in the space and have a team and are associated with an organization. So there's really room for all kinds of different women who are interested in the space this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, what observations and effects in the community have you seen since Game Changers has launched?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest change I've seen is really related to the impact of the tournament. So now there are a lot more women's esports events than there were in the beginning. Um, there are also more stories of the players and the different women involved now. I think it's easier to like find a role model in this space, I have to say. When I started playing games and was most interested as a younger person, I guess a teenager. I'm not old, okay? But when I was younger, um, there wasn't really anybody that I was like looking up to, right? It was mostly like intrinsically motivated. I was like, I like this, so I'm gonna do it. Nowadays, it's way easier to find other women doing this kind of thing. So I think that like I would say even in just the short time Game Changers has existed, this has gone through the roof because you now have players from teams that are representing that for amateur players. The other thing is obviously sheer numbers, right? We've seen a lot of growth. We have a ton of teams and a ton of players in the region, and it's growing every year. It's really amazing to see. And I think it's the best part because I think that the normalization of the presence of women is like really key to actually creating a more diverse space in the future.
Yeah, 100%. I think from kind of the outside, I would say that the introduction of Game Changers does seem to have either inspired people to kind of put on their own women's tournaments. And I do think I was going to say like raise the bar, but I think you kind of have raised the bar for like what a women's tournament can be. So that's awesome. Um, Speaking of kind of other programs that exist, do you have any that you admire when it comes to making a difference in terms of like EDI in esports and gaming?
Um, Honestly, and I think people hate when I give this answer, but I love all of them really.
Yeah,
So obviously I'm super aware of like bigger ones like ESL Impact, but I know that there are a lot of smaller ones. I'm in touch with a lot of women who like coordinate events specifically for Wild Rift or TFT or other games in the space in general. I think if I had to look at it on a conceptual level, I would say the ones that I'm most curious about and most fascinated by really are these smaller events that are like focused at grassroots because I think they're maybe in a way somehow the most important ones. Many women out there make the choice not to pursue careers like this early on. This isn't something that like they're giving it a try for most of their young life and then like later on they're like that storyline happens but not nearly as much as the one that says there's not a chance that you can get this done in the first place, so don't bother trying. And I think that these grassroots events that pop up and really pull in women who are like still in school are maybe the most important ones. So whenever I see them pop up on my timeline, I'm always like retweeting them and watching them because I think they're super important. The big ones are important too for like setting the trend
sure.
that we need to see, but I would say the grassroots ones are where the real work is happening. It's the stuff that's getting people interested and helping them understand that it is possible.
Yeah. And looking at it from kind of the student community in the UK, like we've started putting on our own women's tournaments in our championship, which is great. And Newell does it as well, who's the other esports organizer for um, for students in the UK in esports. And then also a group sprang up last year called the Esports Coven. I'm not sure whether you've seen them about on
Yes, I
Twitter.
have.
Yeah, but they're super active. It's like a group of like current students and alumni who are all kind of bringing women together in the space, which is great that they're kind of taking that initiative upon themselves to get everyone to kind of come together. And I don't know, play with each other, get to know each other, and
Yeah,
also, putting on like they're starting to do their own like talks and sessions for people who might be interested in entering the workspace within workspace within esports and gaming after they graduate. So yeah, it's awesome. Seeing the rise of that in the past couple of years, it's been really, really exciting.
I
Uh,
agree.
yeah. Um, I think sometimes students, though, they find diversity quite difficult into when they're running their own societies on campus. I think trying to get women involved in esports and gaming and get them to join their society is quite difficult. Um, would you have any advice for kind of what students can do to
Mhm.
help diversity? Because it's still so predominantly male
Yeah. I
within their
think
societies.
I think in the process of like increasing diversity in really any space, it's about like showing the version of the future that showing your commitment to the version of the future you want to see. So there might not be many women, but there may be some women. How can you elevate the women that are there that are already involved to be more key to the presentation of that particular group or that particular club or tournament, for example, to show that women will also excel in that space? Because I feel like we're slowly moving past the point where it's just like enough to say, "Hey, women, you can be here," right? You also have to kind of let them know that you can be here, but you might also find success here. You might enjoy being here, this kind of thing. That's really hard to convince someone of when you, for example, let's say have a group that where the whole like coordination or the strike team for that group is men, and you could still say like we're open to other feedback from people who are not on this
Mm,
particular team, but it's not the same as showing that you will have women there, that you want to have women there. So definitely leveraging and embracing the presence of women who are already in the space to help you do this is really key. Then secondarily, it becomes about presentation and language, obviously. There are things that are more welcoming in this space than not. So in terms of language, for example, welcoming language. Everybody knows esports is competitive, right? But maybe taking the most competitive, like who's the best and like who's the greatest, or like let's fight for the for X elite status or whatever. Language like this is just kind of, it's not, like, super, like, welcoming in a way. I would say,
yeah,
like, it's, like,
I know
hard
what
to
you mean.
describe because, like, I'm not saying that, like, women are not competitive. Women can be competitive, but there's, like, something to be said about the fact that sticking to the current vibe of the space hasn't really gotten us very far as including women goes. So maybe it's worth subverting the norm and finding different ways to engage with the people that you would like to include, and I wouldn't call it necessarily like antagonistic language, but let's just
Yeah,
like finding different ways to talk about the atmosphere you want to create with whatever you're doing in order to be more attractive to more people. It's very similar to the concept of like on job applications, for example, adding the line, even if you don't fit all of these requirements, feel free to apply kind of vibe,
yeah,
like
yeah,
that one thing that just makes it a little more like, I could do this. One example I can give is in terms of like tournaments. I've talked to people a lot about like, rather than like putting their tournament out there as like the ultimate battleground for like the best of the best, saying something more community oriented. Like we want to showcase talent from all over the space or within whatever group you're operating. It doesn't have to be like a large group, but we just want to like, we want to see you. We
yeah,
want you to be here so we can like, you can experience this with us or so we can see what you're doing. Stuff like that. Like just things to help people feel more comfortable with stepping through the door, I think can go really far.
yeah. I think that makes total sense. Yeah, focusing more on that kind of community spirit rather than making it all about the competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes total sense. Um, so in terms of students looking at getting involved in the space, with I guess in terms of actually like working in
Mhm.
esports and gaming once they graduate, I say it's always so much about making contacts and expanding your network in the industry. Do you have any tips on networking?
Yeah, make meaningful connections. I get messages a lot of the time from a lot of different people, especially people looking excuse me, for mentorship and things like this. So one of the things that I always recommend is to engage with intention. Um, it's a two-way street. Like if you're looking for a meaningful connection with someone, what are you bringing to the table? That could be yourself. That could be
Yeah.
like the person you are, and in your own presence. That
Mhm.
can appear in many different ways. I've played ARAM games, for example, with people who were interested in learning a bit more about what I do. We over time would play a lot, and then I got to know them better. I was able to provide a reference later. Like
That's
it's
awesome.
it like something like that is better than just reaching out to someone and be like, "Hey, I want to work at Riot. Can you help me? Can you give me a reference? Can you tell me?" Or even like reaching out and being like, "How do I get a job at Riot?" This
Yeah.
is not an example of a meaningful connection. I know it's what you want to know, and I appreciate that as someone who once upon a time also wanted a job at Riot. But one of the things that's super important in interactions like this is to make sure that you're being as intentional as possible and also recognizing this is a person who has a lot going on probably and limited time for engagements like this. How can you make this something that's also a pleasant experience for them? How can you interact with them in a way that works for them? Some people are going to be okay with, chatting over a coffee. Some people won't have time. They'll only be able to do like a quick video chat one day. Some prefer to integrate it into their normal life, like I do, and over a game, time I would have already spent playing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So try to connect in meaningful ways that definitely acknowledge and respect the other person, and show them that you understand that this is, if they choose to, interact with you for networking or for whatever reason, this is time that they're setting aside and that this should be beneficial for both people in some way.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Makes total sense. Um, and so before we kind of round out, I'll ask you one more question. Is there something you kind of wish you'd known before going and working into esports and gaming? Or maybe like one tip to give people if once they're looking at this space
Um,
as an industry to work in?
to everyone, I would say, so I would answer that in two different ways. So for everyone, I would say, um, definitely get a handle on your skills, your strengths. Know exactly what you're good at. Know what you're not good at and set those limits right away so that you're leaning into your strengths at all times. And your self-awareness of those weaknesses will also go a long way because it will help you figure out, where you're not as strong and where you are. Because there are all kinds of positions in the space, really. There are so many. In a single tournament, there are like a bazillion different roles for putting that tournament together. Um, and this is true of the entire industry. So when you know what you do best, um, and you're looking at listings, opportunities for getting jobs, try to match up with the responsibilities. Don't focus so much on the title. Okay. My title internally is not product lead. Okay. It's something else. And if you read that title, you would have no idea what I do,
Sure.
basically. So
Yeah.
don't obsess over titles. Think about your skills, match those up with the responsibilities. If the responsibilities match, apply. Just do it. Like literally just do it. And you will learn through your interview processes what works. For women in the space, definitely make use of your network and try to reach out to other women in the space. I can tell you, I've never met another woman working in the space who was not also excited to sit down and chat about what it's like. So definitely connect with other women in the space. Respect your headspace, your mental well being as well, because it's hard sometimes, and take care of yourself in the process of doing the things that I've mentioned previously, because that mental fortitude, energy, and well-being is so key to also finding success in the space. Because it's not always going to be straightforward, but it is absolutely possible, 100%.
I love that. What a great way to end this session. Thank you, Ashley. So before we end the session, do you want to plug anything? Where can people follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter if you want, guys, or everyone. I'm working
Yeah.
guys out of my vocab. So if you want to find me on Twitter, my name is Ashley Washington. Take all the vowels out and you will know my Twitter handle. And keep an eye out for Game Changers. We are ramping up soon. Our qualifiers begin on April 5th, and our main event begins in late April, April 24th or 25th. So I hope you will watch. And if you're not watching, I hope you'll be playing. And
Yes.
yeah, catch ya in the
Amazing.
game.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, anyone watching this who may be interested in previous sessions we've had, you can go to nse.gg. There's an Intel FutureGen button on the sidebar, and you can see all of our previous sessions that we've done from this year, previous years. There's a wealth of knowledge on there, so go and have a look. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another session. So thanks so much for watching, everyone, and goodbye.